Biological macromolecules are large molecules. That's literally what macromolecule means. It means large molecules. Biological macromolecules are macromolecules that we obtain through food and are necessary for our survival. There are four categories of biological macromolecules: carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, and lipids. Most of our meals will contain all four of these macromolecules. Tacos, for example, will have carbohydrates in the tortilla, protein and lipids in the meat, and all the greens and meat will have nucleic acids as well. DNA is an example of a nucleic acid, so any living thing we eat, whether plant or animal, will have nucleic acids. All biological macromolecules are organic, which means they are made up of carbon-hydrogen bonds. They also have oxygen attached to some of the carbon-hydrogen bonds. All except lipids are considered polymers. Polymers are large molecules made up of repeating subunits called monomers. Mono means one, poly means plenty, and mer means unit. As we learn about the biological macromolecules, it is important to remember what monomers each of them is made up of. Let's begin with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are sugars or saccharides. So you'll hear me use the words sugar and carbohydrates interchangeably. They are found in bread, rice, beans, milk, potatoes, and other foods. Although carbs have a bad rap for making us gain weight, they are actually good for us because they provide us with energy. In fact, athletes will sometimes load up on carbs before a race so they have lots of energy. Plants also use carbohydrates for energy. In fact, plants make carbohydrates during photosynthesis and then store it as starch for when energy is needed. Cellulose is a kind of carbohydrate and is found in cell walls. It gives plants support and rigidity. Paper is made out of cellulose, so if you're taking notes on paper, you're actually writing on cellulose. In fact, most paper-based products are made of plant cellulose. Bugs use carbohydrates too. The crunchy exoskeleton of bugs is called chitin and is made up of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates can be monosaccharides, disaccharides, or polysaccharides. Remember, mono means one, di means two, and poly means plenty. Saccharide means sugar. Glucose is a monosaccharide because it has just one unit of sugar. Lactose, which is found in milk, is a disaccharide because it has 2 units of sugar. An enzyme called lactase breaks up lactose. People who are lactose intolerant don't have enough of lactase in their bodies, and so they can't break down the sugar present in milk. Starch is a polysaccharide because it is actually made up of several units of glucose. Plants will store carbohydrates in the form of starch. Humans store carbohydrates in the form of glycogen. Again, glycogen is simply a large polymer of glucose units. When we need energy, we break down our glycogen into individual glucose units. So it's important to remember the monomer of carbohydrates is a sugar molecule or a saccharide. Carbohydrates have the formula CH2O parentheses, where N is the number of carbon atoms. For example, glucose is C6H12O6. It has 6 carbon atoms, 12 hydrogen atoms, and 6 oxygen atoms. Next up are proteins. Proteins can be found in meat, lentils, eggs, nuts, seeds, etc. Proteins are very important for our body because they have a range of functions that they perform in the cell. For example, enzymes and hormones are made out of protein. Proteins can have other roles as well. The cell membrane has proteins that act as doors that allow the entrance and exit to certain molecules. The structures that move substances around in the cell, like the spindle fibers that move chromosomes during mitosis, are also made of protein. Let's just say our cells cannot function without protein. In fact, protein is the most abundant organic molecule in living systems. All proteins are made up of amino acids. In other words, amino acids are the building blocks or monomers of proteins. A chain of amino acids makes a protein. Most proteins undergo folding before they can become fully functional. Next, we have lipids. Lipids include oils, waxes, fats, phospholipids, and steroids. Lipids are found in avocados, nuts, seeds, animal meat, and dairy products. Our cells store energy for long-term use in the form of fats. So when we are fasting and have used up our glycogen reserves, our body begins to break down fats to release energy. Lipids are insoluble in water and are hydrophobic, which means they repel water. Hydro means water, and phobic or phobia means to be scared of something. So lipids do not like mixing with water. Think of how oil floats on top of water and doesn't mix in it. Because lipids are hydrophobic, they keep aquatic birds and mammals like penguins and otters dry. These animals have a protective layer of lipids over their fur or feathers, making them water repellent. Fat in the form of blubber keeps some animals like seals, whales, and walruses warm. Blubber is just lots and lots of fat. Lipids are made out of a glycerol molecule and one or more fatty acid chains. They are not considered true polymers because the fatty acids are not identical and there is no repeating pattern. In fact, some fatty acid chains can be saturated and have no double bonds, whereas some can be unsaturated and have double bonds. The cell membrane is called the phospholipid bilayer because it is made up of two layers of phospholipids. And lastly, we have nucleic acids. There are two nucleic acids found in living things, DNA and RNA. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid and RNA stands for ribonucleic acid. DNA is our genetic material and is found in virtually all our cells. It is passed down from generation to generation. DNA is double-stranded and lives in the nucleus. RNA is a copy of DNA and is single-stranded. DNA holds the recipe to make proteins, but it is too precious to leave the nucleus. So, the cell makes a copy of DNA called RNA, which can leave the nucleus and go to the cytoplasm where it can direct protein synthesis. Anytime we eat a living thing like spinach, strawberries, or steak, we are eating nucleic acids since the cells of that food contain DNA and RNA. The monomer of nucleic acids is a nucleotide. Here's what a nucleotide looks like. It has a sugar ring, a nitrogenous base, and a phosphate group. So DNA and RNA are made of repeating units or monomers of nucleotides. It is important to know how monomers combine to form a polymer. This occurs through a reaction called dehydration synthesis. Dehydration means to remove water and synthesis means to make something. So, in a dehydration synthesis reaction, we are removing water to join two monomers together. Carbohydrates are made of individual saccharide units. When we remove two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom, the saccharides bond together forming a carbohydrate chain. If we wanted to break the carbohydrate chain back to its saccharide units, all we have to do is add the water back. This is called hydrolysis. Hydro refers to water and lysis means to break something. We're adding water to break the polymer. In this case, the saccharides break the bond between them and the carbohydrate chain breaks. These two reactions occur in our body during digestion. When we eat food containing the biological macromolecules, our body breaks them down to their monomers using hydrolysis. Then, when we need to build the macromolecules back up, our body does so by using dehydration synthesis.